नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल, राम राम सा, खम्बाणी, वणक्कम, प्रणाम। आप सभी का ऑल्टरनेट पीटीआर पे फिर से स्वागत है। मेरे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं पीवीआर नरसिम्हा राव सर आफ्टर अ शॉर्ट ब्रेक। और जो टैरिफ वॉर चल रही है उससे एक चीज बहुत बड़ी निकल कर आई है। हमने एक शो किया था जिसमें हमने गोल्ड, प्रॉपर्टीज एंड शेयर मार्केट्स के बारे में बात की थी, बट आज जो हम बात कर रहे हैं वो इसका एक स्टेप आगे है। एंड मैं बहुत ज़्यादा समय लेते हुए नहीं, मैं सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन पे जंप करने वाली हूँ। Periana did a show with another friend of mine, a YouTuber, who Sumit Jain के साथ में, where he discussed quite a lot of things, but something that caught my eye was China, due to this tariff, starting with tariff war, जितना उसका weakening हो रहा है, it's going for in a very different direction. Periana, a very warm welcome on the show. The platform is yours. जी
Thank
Periana.
you. Thank you, Gayatri ji. When we look at this trade war that is going on, basically, I want to take a step back and talk about a couple of long-term factors that are in play here. Number one factor is US basically is a superpower, unquestioned superpower. Trump may want to make America great again, but the fact is, America is already great. There may be some problems. No country is without problems. America is already great, and it has been great for a long time. But for the last couple of decades, especially the last decade and a half, US has been in slow decline because of various factors, globalization, various things. In general, US economy has been slowly weakening over this time, and the socio-cultural cohesion of the country is being attacked from outside by the growth of social media also contributed to that. So some of the fault lines that have been there in US society forever, for a long time, they are being exploited by Chinese and Russian agents and bots, and social media is amplifying these divisions. So US, and that does play into what is happening in the country and the sense of whether the country is headed in the right direction or not. So whether it was George W. Bush who was the president, Obama or Trump or Biden or now Trump, the bottom line is US is in a slow decline. People don't feel like US is in the right direction and the economy is really all set and taking off. But the fact is US is a superpower. And the other fact is China, after the liberalization of Chinese economy, after Nixon basically worked with China and China came into the international fold and China turned into a chronic capitalism in the 90s and 2000s, China is just taking off. China seems like it could be the next superpower and they could even, it can overtake US, even though US is the current number one. So under this dynamic, China is willing to take some risks to basically take over the number one position from US. And at the same time, the deep state within US is basically very cognizant of the fact that China is about to take off US and they don't want that to happen. So they basically, the primary goal of deep state is to take down China by hook or crook. So this is basically the background uh, factor. And the other thing is, let's bring in India into the picture in this US versus China picture. One thing I'm confident of is India US relationship will keep growing in the coming decade. Basically, in the over this decade, it will only keep rising and rising and rising. India and US are natural partners, and for some historical reasons and some of the decisions that Nehru made long back, basically US and India haven't been friends. But because of things that happened in India since 90s and 2000s, and particularly after Modi ji came back, India and US are natural partners. Both are democracies. Both have very similar values. So one thing I mentioned with you before the last election, US election also, that irrespective of whether it's Kamala Harris who wins or Donald Trump, India and US will basically the relationship will grow. So and India will be used as a counterweight to China by US in the coming years. So these are the basic factors. And now when it comes to this particular trade war, the common narrative that you see in the mainstream media is that Trump is just he's impulsive, he's very erratic, and he's just impulsively making these decisions. He's coming up with these numbers arbitrarily. See, there could be some truth to it, but it's not that it is entirely basically his whimsy that is resulting in this. I do believe that the US deep state, by deep, what do we mean by deep state? Deep state is, some people think that deep state is just a bureaucracy like the State Department and various entities. But the thing is, some of it is, of course, bureaucracy, some of it is invisible forces that are at work, for example, CIA, and then there are some influence, some big, powerful influences which are basically making sure that there is a cohesive narrative coming from various media houses, etc. So there is a seen part, but the bigger part is the unseen part. So that deep state, US deep state, my assessment is that they have decided that it is time to take down China once and for all. Basically, weaken China, and when this Chinese superpower is trying to overtake US superpower, stop that from happening and break China into multiple parts, like what happened with USSR in 1980s. So for that, some pain in the world is unavoidable. Some economic strife across the world is unavoidable. So someone has made that calculation in the last few years that it is worthwhile letting the world suffer and take down China. So with basically with cooperation from those entities, with the from deep state, Trump is basically doing whatever he's doing. See, he some of the numbers that he came up with for various countries, you may say these are all arbitrary. But the thing is, look at the numbers for China. The numbers for China are much bigger than the rest of the world. And the thing is, unfortunately, China is not backing down. And if you look at it from Chinese perspective, China is basically a communist country, and then after their turn to crony capitalism, there is immense prosperity in the country. And at the same time, it is human nature to want freedom. It is human nature to basically not live under dictatorship. And effectively, what China has is dictatorship. So I'm pretty sure there is a lot of anger, lot of rebellion under the surface in China, but it's not coming to the surface. It is basically buried under the surface. Doing well, economy is doing well, and people are having nice gadgets, nice homes, etc. So people are keeping quiet. So, but the thing is, in the last several years since COVID, the Chinese economy is also going through ups and downs. There is some struggle, and there are, if you leave out some of the bigger cities, in many mid-tier towns and other cities, there is some upheaval in terms of industry. Some industry basically shutting down, and some companies struggling, and some people basically losing jobs. So things are happening even in China now. So you always need a bogeyman to unite the country. When there is division in the country and people are unhappy, you need a bogeyman. So for China, US is the perfect bogeyman. And you can paint Trump as this stupid guy. He basically, everything, there is a nice equilibrium. He's just rocking the apple cart. So it's very easy to paint that narrative and paint Trump and US as a villain, as the bogeyman. So China, in my assessment, will remain aggressive and they will not back down. But at the same time, and then for whatever they make, there is more apart from US. There are other countries. They can look at Europe. They can look at Australia, New Zealand. They can basically, there are various other markets, though not as lucrative. You have markets in Africa, South America, etc. Also, so they will try to basically not back down, not be bullied by US and take an aggressive posture. And the thing with Trump is, if you look at Donald Trump's chart, he has Simhalagna. He's like a lion, and he has Mars in Lagna. And basically, Simhalagna is a fairy sign, and Mars is a fairy planet. So there's a lot of predominance of fire in his constitution. He's a very aggressive person, and Mars in Lagna makes him very impulsive and aggressive. So you can't basically rub him off the wrong way. You can't piss him off. If you make him angry, he will remember, and he will not rest until he takes you down. So he's a very vindictive person. So unfortunately, by locking horns with him, China is making things difficult. And at the same time, if you look at it from Trump's own chart perspective, his Rasi, Janma Rasi is Vrishchik Rasi. And currently he has Ketu in the 11th house of gains, and Jupiter in the 7th house of 7th house. 7th house Jupiter transit is a very good transit. So this transit, the last 1 year, is basically a good one for him from the perspective of Jupiter and Ketu transits. But the thing is, if you look at after June, in May, Jupiter will change sign, and in June, Ketu will change sign. So Ketu will come into the 10th house of career from Moon. And also it will be his Lagna, natal Lagna. Leo will be his natal Lagna. So Ketu will be over Lagna. So this is not a good transit for him. And Jupiter will come into the 8th house. See, Jupiter is a very important planet for him. He is the 5th house, the 5th lord of power for him. And also he's running Jupiter Svimchotri Dasa currently. So when he first became president, Jupiter was in the 11th house of gains. When he second came into power, Jupiter was in the 7th house, which is one of the few good houses for him to transit. But he will be in the 8th house from May, June onwards. So it's not really a great time for Trump. There will be some pressures that he will have to deal with. And if you look at it from US perspective, US chart is not accurately known. The Lagna, the ascendant rising sign in US chart, some people take Simha, some people take Kanya, some people take Thula, Vrishchika, Dhanus, Makar. There are various options depending on which time of the day you take as the time when US became an independent country on July 4th, 1776. You will get a different Lagna, and there are different historic accounts. So it's not clear. But one thing we can be sure of is we don't know the rising sign, but Janma Rasi, moon sign is Kumbha. Moon is in Dhanishta Nakshatra. So he's in the beginning of Kumbha Rasi. So from Kumbha, if you take from Aquarius moon sign, US is running Sade Sati since 2020 January. And if you look at it historically, every Sade Sati, there is some economic upheaval, there are some problems. For example, when Great Depression happened in 1930s, it started in 1929, but basically went on till 1937-38 time frame. And for much of the time, US was in Sade Sati. It was basically multiple of 30 years uh, before the current date. Basically, every 30 years you get this. So US was in Sade Sati at the time of Great Depression. So US has been going through Sade Sati since January 2020, Biden term, and now the first several years of Trump term. So overall, this is not a good year. This is not a good time period for US. So balancing all the factors, and also looking at some long-term mundane charts, charts that basically show how a country will be over a 20-year period, how a country will be over a roughly 300-year period, etc., and for 1200 period, etc. My sense is that between 2020 and 2036 is a time when China will target basically to take off and become a superpower, but just collapse on the way. They will basically pick fights that they should not. They overassess, they overestimate their ability and their stature, and they basically bite more than what they can chew, and they will just collapse under the weight of expectations. So from a long term perspective, this is basically a time of trying to rise and then fall for China. And for US, from a long term perspective, this is a time when country slowly weakens. It will not fall like China, but it will basically weaken. I always maintain that US of today is like UK of 1940s and 1950s. UK was the unquestioned superpower, but they basically trying to control Germany. Germany was going to take off and become the superpower of the world and basically take over the whole world. So when Germany and Italy and Japan were trying to take off, trying to control them, UK weakened itself, and it was still a big power, but it was not the same unquestioned superpower of the world. So, in my assessment, China and Russia of today are like Italy and Germany of 1940s, 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, whereas US of today is like UK of that period. So overall, looking at Trump chart, US chart, and some long-term charts, my assessment is this trade war may not have a short end. It may basically be nasty. It may go on for a while. But at the same time, because Trump's chances are not good, he will feel under pressure. He will feel like he's being questioned by people and he's losing his popularity. He needs to basically regain his popularity. So he will want some quick deals with some countries. So some friendly countries like India and a few other countries can basically make some deals. So what I expect is in the next 3 months, I think that Trump will succeed in making some deals with some of the friendly countries, and it will seem like he's making progress. And now China is the bad guy. It's not Trump. Trump is just doing the right thing for Americans. It's just China be acting bad. So he will basically want to create that narrative. But one more thing, if you look at Trump's first term, he had this travel ban for people who are traveling from Muslim countries. It was challenged in courts and he had to take it back. But he basically went back after taking it back. He basically put it back in a more intelligent form where courts could not basically get rid of it. So, similarly, even if it seems like he's taking the trade war back and he's basically relenting, my assessment is it will just be a short term thing. In the end, he will basically want to lock hands with China and prove a point to China, and he will have the blessings of various agencies and various deep state agents who are basically who really run the world, and they will not stop this.
So Trump will break China into five parts, in the 5 to 6 parts, in short.
I'm not sure if Trump will do it or if it will be the next president. But the thing is, one thing I'm confident of, based on a really long-term chart, I've studied a long-term chart based on Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu, a mundane chart that shows over a roughly 300-year period how how things happen in the country, basically good and bad. And I have studied the rise and fall of various empires: Inca Empire, Italian Empire, Roman Empire, Greek Empire, and even basically thousands of years back, Egyptian Empire. And a signature I found in all those charts, I see in the current dasha, in the current chart of China, which is running from 2019 June till 2036 June, I believe. So this dasha basically does show China breaking into multiple parts. I'm not sure exactly how many parts, maybe four, maybe five, but basically I'm very confident that Chinese empire, which is seeming to rise and become the superpower of the world and take over US, will fall before 2036. And the most likely period is late 2020s has some possibility, but most likely period is 2030s basically. So but the thing is, what Trump is doing, the trade war, it is partly the long term agenda of the deep state being enforced, and partly his own erratic nature. But the thing is, as a result of this, some things are happening which will push China into a corner. And China's calculation will be that this is good for them. They can basically rally the nation, and everybody can basically the nationalistic fervor can increase in China, and the CCP may calculate that it is good for their control over the nation. But the thing is, every action has some reaction. So, and also this kind of things can have a chain reaction that is not really easily seen. So what I expect is the world economy, which is already under stress from COVID-19, basically the equilibrium has been disturbed, and re-establishing a new equilibrium is not really easy. So in the process of re-establishing the equilibrium, now this trade war will reshuffle the various trades that are happening in the world. For example, China may change some of the trades it makes with the world and may do more trade with some other countries that it does less trade with now. So some of this dynamic will change, and as a result, various economies will be affected. So in general, 2025, 2026 is not a good time for world economy. Uh, I think I mentioned earlier also. See, whatever happened between 1918, 1919 till 1945, that is happening on a compressed time scale in 2020 to 2036. So basically, we had a pandemic in 1919, Spanish flu. Similarly, we had COVID-19 in 2020. And then 10 years later, there was a Great Depression and there was economic stagnation for a few years. And then 10 years later, around 1940, you had this major, the World War, late 1930s and 1940. As a result of those economic struggles and basically countries being under stress, there was a war. There was a confrontation between countries contending with resources. So what we are seeing is now 2025, 2026 is equivalent to 1929, 1930, 1931, 1932, etc. And then 2031 is equivalent to 1940, 1941, 1942, 1943. The time of actual World War II is equivalent to that. So that's when we will see the real confrontation between some powerful nations. So in general, there will be economic struggle in the world. So CCP may calculate that they can come out of this, but the thing is, it may have unintended consequences. And by locking horns with US, they will end up messing up their economy. And in the end, even if there is a villain that they are painting for their people, the fact that their lives are not the same as before and the economy is struggling will really be the last straw where the disturbance that is occurring within the country can come into the surface. The rebellion, the anger, the suppressed anger of the Chinese people, it will basically come to the surface. And also US can basically, US, CIA and various deep state agents can basically try to vitiate the atmosphere in China about the coming years. So the thing is, what Trump is doing right now is one of the triggers, one of the catalysts. It's not the only thing. There has to be a China of events that will happen over the next several years. But one thing I'm pretty confident of is, as an end result of this, China will be forced into a confrontation with US that it is not in its interest. And at the same time, while it's contending with external problems, there will be some internal problems within the country that will be difficult to contend with. So China will just end up collapsing, and that will be around the just before or most likely after the 2030 time period, just like what happened with USSR. In the case of USSR, it was peaceful, but in this case, it may be after some warlike situation, whether it's a conventional war or some other war in the modern parlance that is yet to be seen. But basically, there will be some big confrontation with the West, and China will basically collapse. So, and one more thing, people in US, they think that Trump is doing all this because he wants manufacturing to return to US. And then there are economists who say that, see, this protectionism is not a way to basically grow domestic industry, and this is not real capitalism. And if you look at the past, whenever this was tried, it did not work. So people are being theoretical about it. They are looking at it from the perspective of economic theory, etc. But the thing is, I'm pretty sure Trump knows, and or at least people around Trump who are with him on this know, and definitely deep state knows that this is not really about growing jobs in US. This is not about basically saving American industry. That's basically just because if you say it that way, it is easier to sell to Trump's base, to MAGA. So that is basically why it is being sold like that. But I don't think Trump really is that is really the agenda. I think the real agenda is to create chaos in the world so that China is weakened, China is easier to basically tackle. And the end goal of this project is China and most likely Russia also can be broken down further into multiple countries, and they are weakened. And basically, US calculation is that as a result of that, US will be the unquestioned superpower with no other power coming close to US. But the thing is, my assessment is US also, just like China, is miscalculating. As a result, US also will become weaker as a result of this confrontation and the economic struggles. And countries like India will actually rise, and they will basically. This is good for countries like India rather than US. But the thing is, it's good for. This will be painful in the short term, in the next few years, but in the end, this will put India in a much better position than India is in right now.
Reena, you said off the record when we were talking, apart from China breaking and the other parallel things which are happening, there will be a downfall of capitalism. So,
Mhm.
what will grow when capitalism is down?
See, people think that there are only two options: capitalism as it exists now, and communism, basically, or socialism. Those are the only two options. But the thing is, see, today's capitalism is not really a perfect solution. Also, if you basically say that, uh, let the market work things out, markets will exploit the weak. If a big businessman can make more money, and he will end up screwing the nature, screwing environment, or screwing people as a part of it, he wouldn't care. So it's not like capitalism is a perfect solution, but at the same time, socialism and capitalism are, sorry, communism are ugly solutions too. And if you look at India, if you look at India of your uh, hundreds of years back, or maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years back, if you look at India, or if you look at the description of how things were in Ramayana and Mahabharata in the bygone eras, the system there was not completely capitalism, not completely communism as we see it now. It was basically a, I will call it a dharmic capitalism. Basically, Vaishyas are those who basically belong to the business community, not necessarily by birth, but by nature, by thinking. So those who are of Vaishya community by conduct, they basically pursue profits. But the thing is, they use those profits for dharma, for helping the world. So if you are basically going to make another $1 million, but you have to ruin your country or ruin Earth to do that, basically that's not acceptable. And if you look at the, see, let us look at it from the East versus West perspective. If you look at Eastern culture, Indian culture, as well as various Far Eastern cultures, we consider that this whole world is one, and we are part of it. We are just a component of it. We are not masters of nature. We are just parts of nature, and we owe everything to nature. And nature is even God. We basically consider Mother Earth as mother, and food as Mother Annapurna, everything in nature. And Prakriti is basically again another goddess. So we basically look at the nature as divine, and us as small parts of the divine, and we need to take care of it. So mindless exploitation of nature was never done, basically using benefiting nature. I'm not saying we should not encourage technology, etc., but the thing is, there should be some responsibility. So the problem is, in Abrahamic religions, the attitude is that God created the world for man, for Adam and Eve. So everything is for our service. Basically, we are the masters of this nature, so we can do whatever we want to do to the nature. So that's the attitude that came with the Abrahamic religions. And the modern capitalism basically has those values. So what I envision is basically going back to the old days. And this is not just India. If you look at the rest of the world, before the Abrahamic religions came, there were various pagan religions, various pantheistic religions, various religions which coexisted, where men coexisted with nature. They had their own technologies, they benefited from nature, they made their lives easier. But the thing is, they did not mindlessly destroy nature, destroy environment. And the other thing is, they did not basically celebrate ruining somebody else's life. They basically made profits, but did not ruin somebody to just make a little more profit. So that real Vaishya nature, where you want profit, but you do it in a dharmic way, in a without basically ruining other people and the world around you. And then whatever
So,
profit you make, use it for
dharmic,
service, use it for dharma. So help the needy. But the thing is, country having a formula for that, and basically country basically saying that we must help the needy and this percentage we should use. So no formulas. It is basically left to individuals, but individuals are acting out of their own dharma, and they are basically doing the right thing. But at the same time, country, the king, the rajan has some rules that basically make sure that when the individual sense of dharma is not good, still really terrible adharmic things are not happening basically. So just have some framework to define what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. So that kind of model. So what I imagine is what I will call a dharmic capitalism is basically what I imagine as coming. Basically, when world economy struggles and to revive the see one more thing, if you look at the current economy, it is all driven by stock market. If there is a sustainable business that is basically offering some product or service to people and has a sustainable amount of profits coming in, that's no longer good, that's not acceptable. You because everything is driven by stock market. So it's not about being sustainably profitable, but it's about your profits basically increasing. So it's about derivatives, second order derivatives. So basically the rate of growth of your profits, the rate of growth of your profits. These abstract things are deciding whether basically you are a good business or not. So as a result of this unsustainable model, people are forced to do crazy things. People are forced to basically ruin the world around them. So we are reaching the point of no return in the coming decade, and this great reset that is coming because of the confrontation between the current superpower and the apparent next superpower. This confrontation, this trade war, and the ensuing economic downturn, and the long stagnation, and the confrontation that is forced between them, non-economic confrontation that is forced between them, this will basically cause a lot of strife in the world, and it will make people wonder what is important to them, prioritize what is important, what is unimportant. And in the end, in 2030s, when this whole thing ends, my assessment is that India will be a strong power, a superpower, which will show direction to the world in defining the right way to do things going forward. Basically mixing spirituality and responsibility towards the entire world with basically the essence of profit, etc. So that collectively, how we should look at a civilization as a collective rather than individuals pursuing their own interests, how we can still pursue our own interests within a collective framework. So that will be defined by India, and India will be the leader, and US will be weakened but still a strong power, and China and Russia, in my assessment, will be further broken down into smaller countries, and some of them may be democracies, some of them may be dictatorships. But the thing is, it'll be easier for countries like US and India to have a handle on those countries and basically not be disturbed too badly. So my assessment is there'll be a sustainable equilibrium. There'll be a dharmic, orderly, and sustainable equilibrium by mid 2030s, and towards that end, we'll have to face some destruction, some pain over the coming years. And this trade war is just like the starting point. He may pause on it, he may go back, but the thing is, in some form or the other, US efforts to push China to a corner and weaken China will continue, and China will be bold and they will fight back. And these two superpowers locking horns will cause a lot of consternation in the whole world.
Yes, sir. And sir, during the course of our discussion, you also mentioned that the time of depression. Are we currently in depression, or we are going to go in depression? And how? What will be roughly the duration? Because it matters for a lot of people who are thinking from finance point of view. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a tough question. I don't have a clear and conclusive answer. Basically, planetarily speaking, astrologically speaking, there are some signatures that are similar to the time of Great Depression. As I said, 2025 and 2026 are similar to that time period. But the thing is, what I want to point out is there is something called free will. Destiny and free will are two sides of the same coin. Destiny basically, what planets show is what kind of circumstances the world has to deal with, but we all have free will collectively and also as individuals. So I'm hopeful that it's not as bad as at that time. We are not really looking at a depression, but the thing is, a big recession and a big economic downturn is very likely in 2025 to 2026. So planners show what kind of things are possible, but the degree to which it happens, that basically is tough to assess. And we it is basically more useful to be positive rather than be negative. So my thinking is that we are looking at a recession, and until 2026, late 2026 is a really, or actually 2027, early 2027 is a really problematic time. So we are looking at a couple of years of really problematic period, and after that things look a little better. But the thing is, enough damage will be done to basically put both US and China on a path of war. So that is
Right.
the purpose of this economic downturn, really, to put them on a path of war.
Is the starting point.
Right.
Right.
And I also mentioned that India will is likely to make a deal with US, because and US is likely to make some deals with some friendly countries too, so that Trump can say that, hey, see, my strategy is working. I'm basically getting them to the table, and I'm making good deals for US. Previous presidents did not make good deals. I'm making good deals. So I think, actually, I'm not sure if your audience knows, but in Trump's first term, there was an effort was made by Modi and Trump to make a trade deal, and even in Biden term, Biden and Modi tried to make a deal, but it never really worked out. But now Trump is highly motivated to make a deal, and in domestic, from the perspective of domestic politics, I think Modi's opposition will say that, oh, he caved in. Look at China, how bravely they are fighting Trump and all that. But the thing is, I strongly believe that it is in India's interest to increase the friendship with US, because when it comes to 2030, 2031 time period, when it comes to the war that I'm talking about, the big war, I'm very confident that India will be on the side of US, even though it may seem like India and Russia are natural partners based on the history and momentum. When it comes to China versus India, Russia will pick China. They will not pick India. So Russia will be forced to make that pick a few years down the road. So it is good that Modi ji and Jaishankar ji are slowly becoming more cozy with US and increasing the economic partnership, military partnership, etc. So this thing should keep rising over this decade, and it is in, even if there is some loss as a result of the trade deal for India, it is worth it. It is basically like an investment into India's future. So India will be, and one more thing is, with Trump, you don't want to piss him off. You want to basically give him some win, and he will be very happy. He will become very thushed basically. If you whereas if you piss him off, he will remember it forever. So Modi ji is smart, Jaishankar ji is smart. They will play cards well so that they can get the best deal for India. And compared to the previous times when US was being there were a lot of tariffs on US goods coming into India, but basically India was having it easier. It will be more balanced now. India will have to sacrifice something, but it is worthwhile. And most importantly, this whole thing is going to end up affecting China badly. So India should actually, this is a good thing for India in the long run. So even if opposition says that India is being taken for a ride, that's not true. I hope that Modi ji and Jaishankar ji will continue to be pragmatic, and they will do the right thing by Indians instead of trying to score some cookie points basically.
Very interesting, Periana. We have couple of what do you say, months left for May, and then October. देखते हैं क्या
Actually,
होता है
one
वहाँ
more
पे.
point I forgot to make. See, forget about October. July is another crazy time. If you look at July, uh, Mars and Ketu will be conjoined in July. So, as I mentioned, Jupiter is changing sign and Ketu is changing sign in June. So late June and July is when Mars and Ketu will be very close to each other. So that's a very explosive time for the world. That's not really a favorable time, and it will be in the seventh house of relations for US. So the thing is, my assessment is this trade war that's going on now, after some cooling off, it may become more ugly in the late June, July, and part of August time frame. So July is a really troublesome time period. So people who are in stock market, basically be careful. In July, there can be some big setbacks to the stock market. So we should be careful. But the thing is, it is in India's interest. Not don't wait till October, but in this time period, basically try to make some deals so that Trump will be under a lot of pressure. Give him some wins.
Very interesting predictions, Periana. And let's see where it goes. But we are keeping fingers crossed because more than Pakistan, I've always been interested in China. Because China has always been more dangerous than Pakistan. Pakistan, the people are just taking maza. It's not really substantial a country. It's an army which owns a country. So China is a real threat, to be very honest. You know,
You're
Rajnath Singh.
absolutely correct. I said many times that people are unnecessarily focused on Pakistan. It's not a worthy rival for
It's
India at all.
masala. It's like Bollywood entertainment for a lot of people, actually. You know
Yeah.
that. So,
See,
but the real threat
India
is
is
still
like an
China.
elephant. China is like a barking dog. So just ignore it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And the thing is, in the past, people were, because this dog had the support of a lion, like for example, US. People were basically more concerned, but now the dog is on its own, and Pakistan is absolutely irrelevant. But like you correctly said, China is the real challenge for India. But the thing is, it is in India's interest to not directly take on China, but watch while China takes on US and basically takes itself apart.
Enjoy with the bucket of popcorn, actually. जी, thank you so much पेरियाना for joining. जाने से पहले व्यूअर्स से रिक्वेस्ट है, पेरियाना का चैनल है पीवीआर नरसिम्हा राव जी का, और मैं I'll put it in the description box, and I have been putting in all the videos and all the we have been doing. Please go and visit. Periana makes very regular videos there on special occasions, not on a day-to-day basis, only on special occasions. Like, subscribe, and share both the channels. If you want to contribute, please come forward and support us. और अगर आप information share करना चाहते हैं, points share करना चाहते हैं, या कोई बात बताना चाहते हैं, then all the links are given in the description box. इसी के साथ जय हिंद, जय श्री राम, हर हर महादेव.
Jai Hind, Jai Sri Ram, Har Har Mahadev.